So if you're a real estate investor, especially somebody that's looking to, maybe you're a wholesaler and you're looking to market to find buyers, this is going to be a great episode for you to listen to today. I have my good friend Phillip Louden on the show today. And he talks about, so he does a lot of creative finance deals and what he calls wraps. And one of the things we really focus in on is how to find buyers for your creative finance deals. And he has a pretty awesome strategy. And so he's in Kansas City and there's a high population of Hispanics that are there. And he has a very, very good strategy on how to connect with them and find buyers for the creative finance deals that he's doing. And he buys from wholesalers and that sort of thing. So one of the things I actually ask him about is, how do you, as a wholesaler, present, like if you're the buyer, how do you present a deal to you as the buyer? What's the best way to do that? And he talks about just making sure it meets my buy box. That's one of the most important things. So there's not really a whole crazy tactic when it comes to marketing to a buyer. As long as you have a good deal, that's going to sell the property, right? So we talk about that a little bit and how he kind of implements his strategies on the buyer side. But another thing we kind of go into is how, he went from being 100% a wholesaler to scaling that, but then deciding like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So they went into their creative finance strategies. And so I asked him about, what are some of the mistakes that you made? What are some of the things that you could relay back to people that would help them if they're a wholesaler, if they're marketing to motivated seller leads. And he talked about commitment. So literally, I've talked about this on a handful of episodes that I've done. And when it comes to marketing, if you don't commit, there's going to be a commitment for a timeline, like making sure you give it enough time, whatever marketing strategy that you're doing, whether it's direct mail, whether it's Facebook ads, whether it's organic social media, a podcast, or whatever it is, making sure you give it enough time to actually get the grounds that it needs. That you have to give it enough grounds. A lot of people start, something for 20 or 30 days and say it didn't generate anything for me. It had no ROI, and then they kill it. And you just didn't give enough time to go. So a time commitment, but also an effort commitment. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll half-ass a strategy. They'll say, I gave it 90 days. And then I'll say, well, what did you do during that 90 days? And then they literally gave it like a 60% effort as opposed to fully committing to the plan or not even having a plan in the first place for the marketing strategy they're going. They were told, yeah, this works. So let's give it a shot. Let's try it out. And they didn't commit to it. So that's one of the biggest takeaways, honestly, I took away from this episode itself. But Phillip has a great community, school community, SKOOL, that has a course in it and a community that is free. He talks about that towards the end, and he teaches people how to do the strategy that he works on. So make sure you take full advantage of that. That is down in the description below, and go check that out. But without further ado, here's my friend, Phillip Louden. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. I'm your host, Josh Culler, and today I have Phillip Louden on the podcast episode today. I'm really excited to dig into the topic that we're talking about because it's not, Phillip, I don't think we've ever talked about what we're about to discuss. And obviously, given the intro, you guys already know what we're going to be discussing. I'm highly interested about this because I've actually, Phillip, done a few wrap deals in the past myself. I've never done a very large amount of them. But obviously, in a world where, wind the clocks back 4 or 5 years, acquisitions was the thing where only people getting on podcasts would only talk about acquisitions and how they're generating leads through text and cold calling and direct mail and all that stuff. And obviously, we need leads in order to be able to do deals. But on the flip side of it, I feel like there was a time period where most people weren't focused on buyers. And obviously, if you're going to wholesale properties, you have to have buyers on the backside of it. And the dispo is very, very important. I mean, if I track back even to where I was getting my roots back in real estate in 2012, 2013, all we did was buyer marketing. That was it. We weren't doing acquisitions marketing at all. So it's a very different world, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for this. So first of all, I want to make sure that we dig into what a wrap deal is. I don't want to make this podcast about wrap deals, but definitely on the disposition side, how to market to find those buyers. However, we need to make sure we set precedents for people that don't know what a wrap deal is and they're just maybe a wholesaler and they're getting going in their real estate journey. So let's talk about that a little bit and then we'll dig right into how you're marketing to find those buyers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can go into the meat and potatoes of how we find buyers, which seems to be a pain point for a lot of people doing wraps. But first off, I can just bring you through the journey of what is a wrap very quickly and concisely, and also how our journey kind of unfolded. So we were wholesalers, and we started buying houses with creative financing, subject to seller financing and so on. And in our market, we found a mentor who's been doing seller finance deals, like selling on seller financing for decades. And he taught us how there's a demographic, mostly first generation Americans, mostly Latino, who don't qualify with the banks. So they have access to capital, they have businesses, they have roofing companies, flooring companies, restaurants, and they have access to large amounts of capital, but the banks just won't finance them. And it's not because they have bad credit, it's because typically they don't have any credit at all because
They're just not bankable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we discovered this. And so we were wholesaling for a long time. We started building, we were doing 5, 6 properties a month. We built up a giant pipeline, a lot of overhead. And then we kind of realized that like we weren't actually holding on to any assets and we weren't building any actual wealth, because the more money that we made in revenue, the more money we spent in overhead. And so it's just this ever growing hamster wheel. And then we learned that like, on our subject to deals, we can literally seller finances to a family, get $400 to $1,000 a month in fully passive cash flow. I should say fully passive because passivity is a spectrum, but like as passive as I've seen in business of cash flow. The families have ownership mindset. They have basically the default rate is extremely low. We've yet to have to evict somebody. We have around 40 of these. And we were able to create, $100,000 seeds where we get cash flow for years to come, free cash flow. We have equity in the deals. And then on subject twos, we get interest rate arbitrage. So we end up really enjoying this model. And now this is all we do. So we used to go direct to seller and do a lot of direct to seller marketing. Eventually we decided to cut that out completely. We buy from wholesalers now. We do a variation of like the Burr model where we use seller finance on the back end. So
I was actually going to ask Phillip how you're getting the deals now, because a lot of people they'll go one way or the other. They'll either do the marketing for themselves because they're so used to it, because wholesaling is only a sales and marketing type business. So they'll do the marketing themselves. But then if you're in the position where you're only doing creative finance deals, it does make sense to buy from wholesalers, and you don't have to spend the time and the money to market for the deals. So
yeah. And at the end of the day, like everything's a business, right? So for us, like the wraps became the business. Right? First, like wholesaling was the business. And we realized that like by wholesaling and doing wraps, like we were just like grinding our gears and having a lot of motion. And we kind of applied the 80-20 to our business and realized that 80% of our energy was going towards the wholesaling operation. When in reality, like we were more of a finance company, and like seller financing these families is the actual asset that we had.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny you bring that up, because the last 3 interviews that I've done, people have talked about 80-20 and how they've utilized it in their business and their marketing. So obviously that's a common theme that you guys better be applying to your businesses. One thing that we're going to be talking about here is the buyer side of it, right? So in a world where, it's very common knowledge to how to market to find your buyer or find your sellers. There's more than enough information, more than enough podcasts and social media content, YouTube courses, coaching programs out will teach you how to generate motivated seller leads. Now you're on the side of the buyer side, where I think a lot of people don't have experience. A lot of people don't know how to generate buyers. What are some of the things that you guys are doing to, find the buyers, find the right buyers, and consistently make sure you're feeding deals to them?
Yeah. So I'll say that the biggest thing that is a challenge is the majority of our buyers are first generation Americans. Most of them are Latino. A lot of them, they speak primarily Spanish. And so I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I don't speak Spanish very well. So that's a big barrier to entry. And that's what like kind of scares a lot of people. It's like, okay, I'm screw the language. So with the wraps, like we like wraps. If you have questions about like the acquisition side of wraps, people can reach out to me in regards to that. One of the biggest challenges people have is in finding these buyers. So I can kind of break down the easiest ways to find buyers and how that whole process kind of looks.
Yeah. Go ahead and do that.
Cool. The easiest way to find buyers for wrap deals is to go on Facebook Marketplace, go on Craigslist, search the term dueño a dueño, and you'll start to see people that are selling properties dueño a dueño. Dueño a dueño means owner to owner. And this is a typical phrase that is used on seller financing. So in Mexico, this is like a very normal way of buying and selling properties. From my understanding, interest rates in Mexico are a lot higher. People don't trust the banks as much. They don't use the banks as much. So selling owner to owner is just a very normal way for people to buy and sell properties. So that term is a term that you can use to begin to locate agents that specialize in selling properties in this manner. That's the easiest way. And if you can, so if you can find an agent in your market who is selling properties dueño a dueño, and just start reaching out to people. So I'll go to Marketplace, I'll look at houses, I'll type in dueño a dueño, I'll find 5 or 6 different agents, I'll message each of them and say, hey, I see you're selling houses dueño a dueño. Can you tell me more about that? And then just kind of open up that conversation, and you'll find ones that do it for other people.
That's interesting. Phil, I don't think we established this yet. What market are you in?
Kansas City.
Kansas City. Okay. So, that's amazing. First of all, I think that, if you know, okay, so this is marketing 101, guys. I talk about this all the time. If you don't know your target demographic better than they know themselves, then you're going to be losing the race that you're in with all the competition, especially in a market like Kansas City. I personally know probably 15 to 20 investors that are in Kansas City that are personal friends of mine. And that's just the people that I personally know. And so to me, I preach all the time, making sure that you know your demographic. And this is the reason why, because if you can implement strategies like this, and you know that the tendencies that Philip was talking about that Hispanics have, where they're from the owner to owner, not being bankable, not trusting realtors, stuff like that. And they bring that to where, people bring their culture into where they live. So if they're moving from Mexico into Kansas City, they're going to still kind of run their lifestyle a very similar way, right? And I think that you understanding that concept is probably going to give you one of the best legs up in your marketing tactics that, probably other people aren't really thinking about and doing. So that's very interesting. So tell me, how so you're specifically talking about Hispanics. How big is your, the amount of deals that you do on the buy side? What percentage of those are Hispanics, and what percentage would be, Caucasian, or any idea?
Probably about 90%, I would say, are Latino. Mm-hmm.
Really? Do you know why? Is it just because of all the things that we've talked about here?
Yes, because all the things we've talked about, the Latino demographic is the fastest growing demographic in the United States. It is a hungry and growing market. It's an underserved market. There's not many people doing this model of real estate. So in my opinion, it's a blue ocean. And yeah, it's just it's the market operates off of supply and demand. There is increasing demand and limited supply.
Yeah. Wow. I was not expecting that high of percentage. Do you think a model like this and being able to directly market to, I know, guys, we're going to swing back into marketing. I want to make sure that we're always coming back to marketing on this podcast, but do you think that this type of model will work in just about any market, or is there very specific niche? Obviously it needs to have a high population of Hispanics for the specific model you're doing, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have students in Texas. We have mentors in Texas also. We have a mentor doing it in Georgia, North Florida. I would say areas where I'm not sure about yet are California and New York City, extremely highly priced areas. I don't know as much, but we have students across the country. We have mentors across the country. This is feasible in most areas. The Midwest is amazing for it. Florida is amazing for it. Texas is amazing for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I live right outside Chicago, and we have just between Chicago and in Northwest Indiana, we have a very, very high concentration of Hispanics that live here, which, is great. Wow, that's amazing. What other tactics are you looking? So that's Facebook. That's one thing that they could do. What do you just specifically focus on that, or are there a couple other things that you could mention?
So if you're doing one, and I can tell you a story. We have one of our students, he had a subject to he had in Texas. He lived in New York City. And so for him, he didn't really know how to find these buyers, right? And so what he did is he just followed what we said. He went to Marketplace, he found an agent, he priced the property, and he had it sold in a week and a half, right? And that's the easiest one. If you're doing a one-off deal where it's just I have a subject to, or I have a seller finance deal, or I own a rental, and I want to try this, easiest way is for me to find an agent. I think you can find all the agents on Facebook Marketplace, or if not, look on Craigslist. Or you can go, you can look on Craigslist also. Just type in dueño a dueño, and you're going to find, we've sold houses on Craigslist.
Really? I haven't heard the word Craigslist in years. And you got
throwback, man.
Really? So, because, okay, the reason I want to bring that up is because, and I haven't told people don't go on Craigslist, but you're the first person in a very long time that I've heard talk about Craigslist, which obviously could be a good thing because that means that nobody else is doing it. But I mean, obviously, when I first got into the industry in late 2012, going into 2013, Craigslist was a very big. And again, like I even specifically said, like all we were marketing for was buyers, and Craigslist was a very big strategy for us. And that was back in the heyday of Craigslist. And now you're utilizing it in 2024. So what tactics specifically would you do on Craigslist?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we use Craigslist all the time. It's just it's a place to get eyes on the property. So at the end of the day, like you have to know the demographic that we're selling to and where they're looking.
Right.
So I'm saying, but strategy one is find an agent, right? So if you're doing like a one-off deal, like find someone who's really good at this. We've done around 40 of these and now we're doing 5 a month, and we just brought this in-house. It was never like the biggest pain point for us. We had agents that did a great job. They would find buyers. And very recently we brought someone in-house to start training them. And so I can tell you a little bit more just about the agents, just because there's like, how should I pay the agents, or like, what should they be charging, and so on, which I think is a really important piece of this. So typically our agents will charge 15% of the down payment, or $3,000 flat, up to like a maximum of $5,000. Usually our down payments are around $20,000. So be paying like a maximum of $5,000 to bring an agent in. You had to keep that $15,000.
Yeah. Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode. Yeah. That's amazing, dude. I think that there's a lot more that we could crack open into the specific strategy itself, but I think like I would rather just send people to your school community for that, which we'll talk about here in a second. But one thing that I want to kind of lead down that we didn't even discuss that I was just thinking about, we have a lot of wholesalers that listen to this podcast. So obviously a lot of people that are learning how to do real estate, people that are just beginners, and everywhere in between, right? And I think that one issue that wholesalers will have is obviously finding the buyers. You buy from wholesalers. If you're a buyer, what type of information, what are you looking for when a wholesaler brings you a deal? And the idea of this is I want to be able to teach the wholesalers how to market to you as the buyer for their deals. What do you look for?
Yeah, great. So we have a strict buy box, but we're always searching for deals, and we are hungry for deals. We pay really well for deals. We're always searching for deals. So for our buy box, it needs to be 3 bedrooms. We don't buy 2 beds. So it needs to be 3 bedrooms, ideally after 1920 build. Those things are desirable, like if the property has a garage, off-street parking, large yards. The area is obviously very important. We try not to buy in areas where it's extremely high crime. We buy properties that are not too expensive, so it's like B and C class neighborhoods. So that's like the majority of our buy box.
But so the important thing to you is the buy box. So if you have a buy box and that property that they're bringing to you qualifies in that buy box, more than likely you're going to do the deal.
We're buying 5 a month and we would love to buy more. So if you had deals that fit that buy box and they brought to us, that we can buy all of them. 70 to 80% ARV minus repairs.
Yeah, of course. If you have a wholesaler bring you a deal that's not in that buy box, maybe it's slightly outside of that, do you just say no, or do you send it to other people that you know? Like, how do you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, it depends. We have one girl who's focused fully on acquisitions, and she's doing all the wholesaler relationships. She's reaching out to them, talking to them, checking in with them. Like, we're hungry for deals. Like, you have good deals. Like, there's people like this, like us in every market, like many of them. She's out finding them and like figuring out what they want. I know when I first started wholesaling, like I found a hedge fund. It was called SFR3. They used to be in a bunch of different markets. And the guy who was running their computer, I didn't really know how to analyze the deal. So I would like send him a deal. He would send out his inspector who would go look at the deal. Then he'd say, okay, we can offer you this much. And then I would just try to lock it up for like 10,000 less than that.
Yeah. That's amazing. I wanted to bring that up because I think it's important. Again, like most of the people that listen to this podcast are probably not doing, the strategy that Phillip's teaching right now. So that's why we're talking about it. But I do think it's important. If you have wholesale deals, obviously one of the best ways to market to a buyer is by meeting their buy box, finding that buyer and then meeting their buy box. And we call that reverse wholesaling back in the day. I don't know if people call it that anymore because it can be a little bit more challenging to get deals and assign it to a specific buyer consistently. But that's essentially what it is. So if you can get deals locked up and go hunting for specific things that a buyer's looking for, meet people like Phillip where he says he's hungry as a buyer, he wants more deals, then you're not going to have any problem dispoing your deals. You don't have to run any marketing, right? It's a perfect world.
Find our area, go into our area, go deep into that marketing, find a bunch of properties. We'll buy them all the time. I don't care. We've paid $60,000 wholesale fees, $50,000, $30,000. It's some of our friends at the mastermind that we met at, Josh. We buy their deals all the time. We've given them tons of money in wholesale fees, and we're very happy as long as it fits our buy box.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So as we wrap up, we keep these episodes short and sweet. One of the things I really want to ask you, because you've had some experience in the wholesaling space, and then you kind of bowed out of it. Now you're, specializing in what you're doing now. What are a couple of things that you could really relay back to the audience and say, these are some of the marketing things that the things that I did in my marketing that worked or didn't work, and here's why I want to bring that to you. Like, what mistakes did you make, or what are some of the biggest successes that you had that you could share?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, like everything begins with vision. So it's like, what do I actually want my life to look like? And we tried scaling a wholesaling company, and then we realized that none of us actually wanted to scale that wholesaling company. We didn't want to like grow giant sales teams and run big sales teams and so we realized that we were growing something we didn't actually want. Yeah. So like for me, it's like, it begins with vision. Like, what is the vision for my life? Like now, like I can live all over the country. I structured a business in a way that supports my lifestyle. And for me, that's the most important thing, because at first I built myself a job. So that's like, I think everything begins with that. That's why I dropped that line here very quickly. But like things that worked with us in regards to marketing, what didn't work, I think, was shiny object syndrome. Like there's a lot of different things that we tried. And like the thing with marketing is like everything works. It's just giving it time and space to allow for it to work. So like there's people in our market that do, Michael Frankie's in our market. He does, door knocking pre-foreclosures. Yeah. And like, that's an incredible niche. Like that's an amazing niche, but what it requires is becoming an expert in pre-foreclosures and knocking on doors and eventually building out a team to knock on doors. Right. But like going into something like that would work super well. We did that for a little bit, but we didn't stick to it. And then, direct mail worked really well for us. We bought, Nice List. I actually forget who the list provider was. And then direct mail was working really nicely for us. But we did most of our stuff texting, because texting was really good then. Yeah. When I came in 4 years ago, like texting was like super easy to do. And we did everything with texting. But I think everything works. It's just like a matter of sticking to one thing and doing it really, really well. And when you cap that, like how well that's going on, then you can add in like that next layer of marketing as well. But I think pay-per-lead was working really well for us. Direct mail was working really well for us. Yeah. But I think like the biggest thing is just like knowing your buyers. Like right now, there's an area outside Kansas City, about 40 minutes, where it's really hot. They're building a bunch of like Amazon facilities, and I think like a battery company for Tesla. And so like we're doing some flips out there now, and it's like a market I never would have bought or sold in. But like we're buying houses out there, and people are marketing there now because they know that this movement in motion is happening, and there's more buyers there. So just like getting cahoots with your buyers, and like, I mean, in regards to marketing, like I'm just a big proponent of like, just stick with something and give it the right amount of time, and just like give it time and, measure one thing at a time and optimize.
Yeah. One of the things that I come out with that, what you just said, is commit. I think that in our businesses, people will start something up, and if it doesn't have an ROI within the first 30 or 45 days, they cut it out, and they just don't guys, things take time to develop. Anything great takes time to build. And as long as you commit to it, and here's the thing, obviously, like, there's a right and wrong way to do everything. You could do direct mail, do it very poorly and half-assed and not do it correctly for the first 30 days. And yeah, sure, it's not going to generate anything for you. But if you commit to it and say, like, I'm going to give it the best that I can to this strategy and commit for a decent amount of time for it, then if it doesn't generate what you're looking for after you can firmly say, like, I gave it the chance that it needed and it's still not generating, then sure, cut it off. But I think that, people just don't commit to things. They'll try something out for 20, 30, 40 days and then cut it out. And that's a very common thing that I see in people, and that can disrupt your marketing strategies and your efforts so much, and people just don't understand that that's the truth in it all. So I think committing is a big piece of that.
30 days is not enough, and commit. Like, everything in life requires commitment. It's like, and I'm also guilty of this. I'm like the visionary maverick personality who wants to start a million things at once, but like, it takes my business partner, who's like more of that COO kind of minded guy, to say, wait, Phil, let's put this and try this and give it a minimum. Now, I think it's 90 days is what is recommended by our mentors is recommending to us. Like 75-ish days to just see if it works. And so, it's an investment, and you get to see what the results are. And
the other piece of that too is time commitment's one thing, but effort commitment's another thing too, right? Like, so you have to give it 90 days, but you also have to make sure you do it. Like I said, you have to make sure that you give it a chance and you do it right. Like, you're making sure that you pour every tactic that you're supposed to be doing to whatever it is, if it's direct mail, if it's PPC, if it's SEO efforts or Facebook ads, and you pour into it as much as you can for that time period, then sure, you can make a call on if it's going to work or not. So
would you say most of your audience are like beginning wholesalers or more advanced?
It's everything in between. So I would say most of the audience is probably going to be people that are getting going.
Okay. I think the biggest thing that we did when we first started was, once we had leads in our system, we hired a follow-up specialist, and then just to call through all the old leads. That's probably the highest ROI thing that we ever did. It was get a follow-up specialist. Ours was in the Philippines. She was amazing. She worked super hard. And she would just qualify the leads. And then when they're ready, she would pass it off to the closer, which was, for a lot of our wholesaling company, was me. And so she would just pass off qualified people. And that saved so much of my time. So I can just be speaking to potential deals. Yeah,
that's such a great tip. That's what every wholesaler needs, is that specific position. Would you equate that to, like, some people call it a lead manager? Is that kind of the same thing, or do you think there's a difference there in like the titling?
A title's a title. She would call through. She would go through a dialer with all of our leads that were tagged as follow up with at some point in the future, and she would just call through all of them. And as you grow as a wholesaler, you get more and more leads. We had tens of thousands of leads in our system at a certain point. And it's just, when you have a few hundred, it's just calling back through those. And the ROI is definitely there. She would bring us the majority of our deals.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great tip. I 100% agree with that. And that's what I was looking for, something that, you took away and you're like, this is what we did, and it worked. And that's a couple of really great tips. Man, I appreciate the time that you spent with us and all the value that you brought here. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your school community that you have for the creative finance strategy that you work within. So talk about what it is and how people can get connected with it.
Yeah. So once you're getting some deals to wholesale and you decide that I want to start buying and holding onto properties, I think selling properties on wraps is my favorite method. That's why we've gone all in with it. We create $400 or $1,000 in cash flow per month per property. It's very passive. And it's also there's we don't get phone calls about, oh, this is broken, the roof is leaking, the toilet needs fixed, because everyone who lives in their houses has ownership mindset. So they take care of the houses on their own. And so this is the model that we really love. And we're starting to educate people about how to do this. I think it's an amazing opportunity across the country. And we already have students that are across the country. And it's just a really good opportunity, not just to create wealth and to create passive income, but also to do good while doing well, because most of these families are first generation Americans. And like we used to wholesale to hedge funds all the time. It's not like a bad thing, but like going to a closing with a hedge fund and going to a closing with a family that just moved here from Mexico like 7 years ago, and this is their first time getting access to home ownership in the United States, it just hits different.
Yeah.
And so it's a really cool model, and we're educating people. And we have a school community, SKOOL, and it's called Seller Finance Freedom Academy. And it's totally free. You can pop in there, and we're like, our goal is to create more freedom in the world. And we found a model that aligns purpose and commerce and creates passive income, and we love it.
That's awesome. I'll go back to, so capping off of what you just said there. And by the way, that will be a link down in the description below in the show notes. So make sure you guys do go check that out and take full advantage of that. But Phil, one of the things that, like, as you were wrapping that up, I was like, it goes back to something that you said earlier that you gave a tip as that, we actually had Brad Chandler on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and he was talking about, you know, how he scaled and blew up his business. And he had one of the largest wholesaling organizations in the country at one point. And he talked about how you should align your vision and your goals with the business strategy, but also that goes to the marketing strategy, because you could definitely like really increase your marketing and your sales, and then you're scaling your wholesaling business, but it wasn't the direction you wanted to go into, wasn't the vision that you had and the purpose that you had and that sort of thing. And you can really market yourself out of your vision. That's a kind of an interesting concept to think about. And so that, you know, the new strategy that you've developed and now you're offering to everybody to learn, I think is, you know, important. And it's really good to understand the concept of making sure that you are marketing to support the certain business that you're trying to build, to support the certain lifestyle that you're trying to build. So it all goes hand in hand. So anyway, man, well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today and spending some time with me and delivering, frankly, a lot of really, really good tips and value. And definitely, you guys, make sure you go check out that link down in the description below. But Phillip, it was great having you. Look forward to having you back again soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. Make sure you share this with your friends, your real estate investor friends, send them on over. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the description down below and go check out my YouTube channel. I've been loading up a lot of great content there. All these interviews go there as well. And I'm putting out a lot of tips about how to improve and increase your social media marketing, your organic podcast marketing, your YouTube marketing, and all of that. And I think that can really help some people. And obviously, if you ever want to connect, make sure you find me on Instagram or Facebook. Just look up Josh Culler and you'll find me there. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you on the next one. See ya.